Welcome everybody to Tasty Tuesdays. It's Lorene Hughes from Crafting Possibilities, your host for tonight. And tonight I have Barry Laney with me from First Sense Tarot. Welcome, Barry. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Rant. Yeah, doing well. Thank you very much. I like the introduction. That was pretty good.
Aww. Oh, you know what? You're just such a gentleman, and you're just so humble, so stinkingly humble that we just had to boost you up a little bit. So let me introduce Barry properly. So Barry is an intuitive communicator, a psychic medium. With his gentle and friendly style, Barry is effective and honoring the responsibility that comes with passing on the information coming through from the spirit realm. His greatest wish is the information that he brings to you a sense of clarity, possible personal growth, and that you feel more secure in moving forward on your journey. How does that sound?
Very good. You've done your homework.
I was picking up the vibes or sitting next to you. So the lovely Barry, he's actually a South Australian resident, and he does work online as well as in person. In the show notes, you'll see where you'll catch him at the various fairs, the Queen of Wands fairs that are floating around. This lovely man travels so many hours to come to these fairs. I'm just absolutely astounded. Like so many others wouldn't be bothered. But Barry is diving into this world of being a psychic intuitive medium, however you wish to land on your title today. And I would really love to know, Barry, let's just get straight into it. So how did you begin on your spiritual journey?
Okay, well, when you say begin, I didn't really start until late. Like I would have been probably 29 when I got my first set of tarot cards. But going right back, like to childhood and all that, I've just been, like a lot of people, I suppose, just drawn to anything supernatural. So, I just, especially if there was things on TV and it was like back in the medieval era, like Robin Hood days and all that, especially King Arthur and the round tables, anything like that for some reason just had me glued and fascinated. And especially if you had the scene in there where the king or something would go down and see his fortune teller, like the witch, and she'd throw a few bones around and whatever and look into, scry into the water and come up with all this information. That always really held my attention for some reason. Like, it's not just magic, it's something really special about it. So there was always that going on. I remember, I would have been probably at least 8, maybe 9. And that's a long time ago, back in black and white days. My eldest sister, she was collecting these tarot cards. Now, back then, I'm not sure there was cornflakes or I'm sure they were on the back of a cereal packet, right? And you'd have maybe, 5, 6, and they'd be cut out. And then, you wait until you get some different ones. And I didn't even know what they were. I didn't know they were tarot cards, but they had my attention. There was something about them. They fascinated me. So, there was always that sort of thing going on. And like I said, all the Knights of the Round Table, Lord of the Rings later on in years, anything like that, I would just be, like this it felt like I just belonged there. It was just something fascinating, Merlin, like you couldn't get enough of Merlin. And, like I said, I would have been, probably 29. I went and got my first tarot deck. I sort of been looking at them on and off. And I thought, no, I need a deck. It's the Mystic Tarot. I've still got them here somewhere. I kept them. I had them for a few months. They were all right. Some of the pictures, I don't know, they seemed a bit dark. I wasn't really drawn to them as much as I thought. So I gave them away. Didn't give them away, just put them to one side. And I went back and got the red and white deck, like most people start with, and sort of got going into that. And like most people, didn't really know much about it. So just had that and the book, look at the cards, that's what that means and all that. And even then, when I was first starting, it was like, oh, how come that card means that? Because when I look at it, to me, that would mean something else. See? Mm-hmm. And I still have names for certain cards in that red and white deck. I've got lots and lots and lots of decks now, but most of my collect is for the artwork. But things, and it helps trigger me. You'd be aware of like the Magician, for instance. That's a good one. You're standing there like that. I call that my John Travolta card. He just looks like John Travolta to me standing there. And it's like, I'm prepared. I've got something to show you, and so I take up little things like that. I've got a few more decks after that. But the whole journey, I've been to a couple of readers. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, John Travolta.
I can see why you call him the John Travolta. I love it.
That Saturday night thing going on. And as you know, like if you go into the book, it's all about, you're prepared, you're ready to go, you're sort of waiting for an opportunity. Just like John Travolta. I mean, he would have practiced them dance moves over and over again. He was ready. Now he's waiting for the opportunity. He's waiting for the audience to show it all off. So, that sort of helps me a bit. But yeah, I've been to a few tarot readers. I probably used to call them fortune tellers back then, hoping to get some information like most people do because, feeling a bit lost, probably between jobs, whatever. At the time, I suppose I was like, wow, it felt pretty good because they were telling me what I was hoping to hear. All right. I didn't realise until now that I'm doing it. If I can look back then and think, yeah, that was a bit lame, But there was one in particular I went to. It was not long after my brother passed, and I didn't sort of even know about mediumship or nothing like that. And I just went because I wanted a reading. I wanted to know where I was going, what was happening. And anyway, this poor woman, I'll never forget it. I went in there and, and I sat down and I'm looking at her and just the colour drained from her face. And I thought she was going to pass out and fall off the chair. And then she just looked at me and said, your brother's passed, hasn't he? And I said, oh, yeah, that's not what I was there for, because I didn't know that music. And she goes, yeah, I can see him. He's standing right there. I thought, oh. And she said, he's fine. And she told me after, she said that is the first time it had ever happened to her. She'd never seen spirit before. But as plain as day, he was, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I believe that she was just, and he was a freshie. It didn't and well, I did explain. I said, oh, sort of sorry about that. He sort of passed about 4 or 5 weeks ago. But yeah, like I said, that wasn't what I was, there for. But yeah, and she gave me some clarity on a few things. But I walked away from that thinking, wow, this woman's got it going on. Like, she can see spirit, and I knew she was genuine and all that. Scared the bejesus out of her. She was shaking afterwards.
Aww.
But I've been to a few other readers, and then I started going to ones that actually done mediumship. And one in particular was very good. She would bring in some real evidence, that it was my father, that stuff that she couldn't have known. So that was good and everything. But interesting, some of these readers and some of these mediums, they quite often say to me, so why aren't you doing this? Why? You've got it in you to be a reader, psychic, medium, all that. Why aren't you doing it? And I said, well, I've got a couple of decks of cards that I play with, only for myself, nothing else. And then, this kept going on. And then my daughter, she wanted someone to come with her. She was going for a reading, but it was in Adelaide. Well, I say Adelaide, but it's not. It's actually Moana. So it's, yourself is out of Adelaide. But we went up there, and I sat in as a support person. The same thing. Why are you doing this? I'm just here for support, and we'll talk to you later. And from there, there was a workshop being organised, and I had the invite to go. Obviously, you pay for these things. It's a 2-day workshop. And I thought, why not? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I've always been interested, so have a go. But that's 2017. So yeah, I was 57 at the time. So I'm a very late beginner. This is not something I've been doing. It's something I've loved and been passionate about, but nothing I've ever gone out and done. And went into this workshop with all these other people, nervous, not knowing what was going on. There was a lot of psychic work because I suppose that's mainly how you start. You got to get your psychic going first before you connect with spirit and all that. And it's I can always remember that because I went in and we paired up different partners, and you just sort of sit there, have that, I made out I was being the gentleman and said, ladies before gentlemen, because I didn't want to go first. So she went and done this psychic reading on me, and I thought, I can relate to that. This is all right, and that was pretty good. And anyway, then it was my turn. So I sort of got my eyes closed because I'm very visual, you see. So I'm just relying, on any pictures that sort of come into mind. And I can remember I just started off. I said, okay. So I said, I said at first she had 4 children. And she goes, no. She said 3. I said, well, I'm getting 4. But if you say 3, obviously so we'll go with that. But she told me later, she did say a lot of people have told her 4, and then she explained to me that she did lose one. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we went with the 3, and straight away I said, but they're so different to you. I said, these young girls have got jet black hair, and this woman was blonde, and not a fake blonde, she was blonde. I said, and they're jet black. And she said, that's correct. And then she explained, husband was, I think, Greek or something, but that was all through the features of him. So it was, And I said, well, speaking of your husband, I said, what's his obsession with bikes? Oh, he's got a few of them. He likes to race these bush bikes. So we went from there. And then I was talking to her about, so you're thinking about going canoeing again. You used to canoe in the past, but now you're going canoeing again. And she said, yeah, that was correct, because it was a bit of a difficult thing because of one of the children was severely autistic, and they had to have a special seat and a harness. Otherwise, this child would probably just launch himself into the river. So we had that going. Oh gosh, there was, all these things, one after the other, about that boring me with all the details. And I'm like, of course, the more you get right, the more confident you get, and you just keep going. Mm-hmm. Well, I come away from that thinking, what the hell was all that about? Like, I'm just this verbal diarrhea sort of thing, but everything I said was on point. So that whole weekend, it was a big turning point for me, a big learning point. Picked up a lot of valuable information, and of course, then you just get spurred on. From there, I ended up, it was probably a couple of months or more later, that the woman that hosted the 2-day workshop was headed place, she decided to start teaching. And I thought, I'm interested. There's nothing here like in Mangimi. There's probably something here now. They're just starting up. But way back then, there was absolutely nothing. I thought, well, here we go. Once a month, 5 hours to Moana, 2-hour workshop, 5 hours back home again. And that's how we done it, once a month. Then we had an online thing going, so we could have a bit of a chit chat during the weeks leading up to class, do a bit of homework, that sort of thing. And then a friend in the class, she's, I can't think of it. She was at one of the spiritual churches anyway in Adelaide. And she said, you might be interested in this. Come over. Val Hood's coming down. I think she's from up New South Wales, Wollongong Way, something like that. I'm allowed to mention her name because I've asked permission. And, so I thought, yeah, why not? Go along, learn a bit more. It's another workshop. And paid all the money and everything. And my daughter wanted to come with me. Like, she was interested in all this as well. Yeah, it should be fun. And she started to actually go to some of the other classes, the workshops we used to do monthly. So I think it was the day before we were heading over, and I looked at the whole thing properly. And I said, I think I've stuffed up. The whole class was improving your platform work in evidential mediumship. And I think, I don't do mediumship yet. It's a little known platform work, like, oh shit, but I paid it. So we got to go. And when we got there, I sussed Vale out, and I said, Val, look, I think I've stuffed up. I said, she goes, I know. And she was fully aware, more or less. And it was a very, very daunting, and then they introduced you, like, all these people sitting here, where you're from, what are you hoping to get out of this, what have you done, all that. And you've got all these people, they're talking, and, I've done this for a few years, I've done that. I do stand up in church. I've been to Arthur Finney College twice. And I'm thinking, oh, hell, I'm out of my depth here. One after the other, I've worked with this, I've worked with that person, all these big names. And then, because it come to me, well, I'm just hoping to learn something, a bit of mediumship. I do classes once a month, a bit of psychic work, but nothing more than that. But Val, like, she's very good, very encouraging, very patient. And she knew. So we were watching these people come up, and they're doing their thing and bringing through spirit, have a bit of a talk, passing on a message. You know how it works. Mm-hmm. And then it was my turn. And before I even got up there, I was getting stuff going on in my head. So when I got up there, I had nothing. Well, I thought I had nothing, which I thought, just start talking about what was going on in your head while I was waiting for my turn. So I did. And so I was brought up about this young girl and stuff like that. And I thought, this should be easy, because you're waiting for some hands to go up, because most people, it's a mother, father, grandfather, the oldies. And I thought, well, I've got a young girl here. and she loves her bike and all this sort of stuff. And I'm waiting for hands to go up, and no one's putting a hand up, and I'm thinking, I knew this was going to happen. But Val's encouraging me, more information, this. And then she ended up saying to me, do you know how the girl passed? And I got a feeling I did, but I put it across for, let's just say this. She's very upset about her bike because it's ruined. And Val goes, yeah. And who it was, I picked up on someone Val knew. So that's why there was no hands going up. It was the teacher. She goes, yeah. And she said it was something when she was very young, this girl was on her bike and a truck backed up and hit her because there's no reverse speed with someone enough in them days. Yeah, so she passed, and I said, and she was very upset about her bike. So there was all this sort of thing. And when I went away afterwards, same thing. You just go away in disbelief, like. So I've just made up this story, but someone knows exactly what I'm talking about. So it really did take, well, that's what it's like. And it really did take a long time to just accept the fact that, because Val explained, no, you're the channel. Just accept that they're just using you for information. So just go with it. And even to this day, it's still a little bit, when it goes right, love it. If it goes a little bit pear-shaped, you tend to doubt yourself a bit. But yeah, and then, since then, I've done a few workshops with Vale. One of them was two of them actually, but in Elizabeth. But the first one there was quite interesting. I feel I've done some of my better work then. And I stayed back on the Sunday. You had the option of, do you want to stand up and try a bit of platform work? And because I was terrified, standing up in front of the church and hopefully going to bring through a message for someone. But something was telling me if I didn't, I'd be halfway home, or I'd get home and it'd be just one of them things I regretted. So I thought, no, I've got to stay. So I did nothing like, I don't know, Sunday afternoon. It was a late Sunday afternoon. We went back. Yeah, fair shit myself. But it all went all right. Got a message through, a lot of thank yous, a lot of congratulations, you've done well, that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, yeah, but in class, some of my readings were so much better than that. So, and I still do that from time to time, and things aren't as good as I think because I compare to what I've done in the past. I suppose it's a bit like someone playing darts. If you're a really good dart player and you're just banging away, getting 180s all the time, then all of a sudden you just have a crap night and you're getting a few good scores, but you're not winning, and you just go away thinking, I know I can do better than that. That was just so lame. So, yeah, there's that side I want to get away from that. But, that went well. So I've done a few workshops there. And from that, with this day and age, it's so much easier now because I've been doing workshops. So we do that by Zoom. Mm-hmm. And you get a group of people that are interested, like-minded people, I suppose, and you're on a different sort of level. But we have a great teacher. He's overseas. So most of us are sort of, I'm here, we've got Adelaide, at Western Australia. So, but you're scattered around, but you're all on Zoom like we're here. And we get separated into different rooms. We'll practice a reading or there's all different things. It's not just all mediumship all the time. There's a bit of psychic work. There's other stuff going on. So, yeah, and you got to sort of really push yourself a bit. So it's good. It's good. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I find I love that you're saying you're standing up there and you're like, oh God, that was a bit lame. It was a little bit crap. It wasn't quite as clear or as what I've done in class. And I find that for me, when I'm in a session where I'm one-on-one with someone and it's like in this room or online, I find my messages are so much clearer and they're more potent. There's just a lot more clarity to them and there's a lot more detail. But when I'm in something like, say, the psychic fairs or something like that, there's just so much energy around and so many different little messages going around with everybody that sometimes my connection with my person isn't always as crystal clear. It's a little bit fuzzy around the edges because I'm having to focus so much more on maintaining my space with that person rather than just being present, which you can do when it's quiet. Do you find that as well?
Yes. I was a bit concerned about doing the fairs for that reason. I didn't know how it was going to go because, like you said, you do Zoom, but you're still in your own little bubble. Or when I read here in my room, that's the same sort of thing. So I was really a bit, it's just going to work at a fair. But it actually...
Great practice for focusing.
Yeah, it actually surprised me how much I tuned things out. To be sort of sitting there and the first fair I went to, there was a gentleman next door. I was outside at the time, so this gentleman had a stand set up, and I couldn't sort of see him because I had the side of my marquee was there, but he had some music going. And the host sort of come around, make sure everything's okay. Is that music too loud? No, let him go, it's all right. But when I got into it, all that just disappeared. And I sort of got into that zone and worked, with the cards and listened to what Spirit was telling me. And I was able to get some really good messages through. And it quite surprised me because I was imagining just, like you said, too much energy, too much going on. But no, that wasn't the case at all. So
that's fantastic.
It was quite good.
It really is fantastic for being able to hone those skills of getting, ignoring the distractions of what's happening around you.
Yeah, I'm going to get in trouble here because I know the wife's watching. Because people say,
"Hi,
how do you cut all that out?" And I said, "Well, I've been married for a long time, so."
Selective hearing and all that. Gotcha.
But no, it did surprise me, and I ended up, even that first day, it didn't take long, and I felt really comfortable. It felt like I've been doing it for so long, which, it was surprising, because my wife was there to help, so she helped me set up just as well, because the square that we used to pay with sometimes that wasn't working, and I'm just absolutely no good with technology. I'm just freaking out, and the wife's trying to calm me down. Yeah, but this and this, and and even she thought this isn't going to go well. But then when she managed to fix everything, and the fact that I knew she wasn't too far away, so if anything went wrong, quickly on the phone, zip back in, So it was good. I had a safety net. A lot of people don't have the safety net. So and it went well. So that was good.
Yeah. So within all of your workshops, and I know you've had some time to sort of ponder this question, I'm very curious to know the answer to what does consciousness mean to you at this 10 seconds?
Yeah, that to me, that is so very, very hard to explain. It's a bit like trying to bite your own teeth. It's because again, I mentioned these workshops, and I suppose that question has been kicked around in some of the workshops, you see. And again, I suppose I compare myself too much to other people, but they're all coming up with, when I awoke and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like this now, and I see this, and I'm thinking, wow, what's wrong with me? I'm just like, to me, basically, how could you put it? To me, like consciousness for me is, well, it's like with everybody, I suppose. It's just your own personal experience of your inner and outer experience, and how you see like the universe. So like us sitting here, like, this is to me basic consciousness. I'm visually conscious, but at the same time, I'm aware that if I'm getting uncomfortable, I'll shift in the seat. So, I'm conscious of my comfort. When I first was before we come onto the show, I'm very conscious of how nervous I was. And so there's that sort of thing. So it's just how I see things on a personal level and how everything around me affects me. And I think that's probably the same with everybody. It's like I mentioned, that woman giving the reading, like she saw a spirit. I didn't see a spirit, but that's her reality. It was there, and I can't take that away from her and go, no, you didn't. There's no one there. Because, and I know she saw something because, like I said, she near passed out and fell on the chair. She was, she wasn't faking that. And that's the thing, so we all experience things in a different way. I've learnt over time, like I said, because I've always been fascinated with all this supernatural stuff and all that. So I've always had this very strong belief that there's more going on than we realise. Like spirit contact and stuff. It's like that's interesting because that conversation has come up. Had the conversation with other people. Oh, you believe in ghosts and that? Yeah, nonsense. Because they haven't seen ghosts, and yet they'll talk for hours about aliens. Have you ever seen an alien? And they haven't seen it. Haven't seen an alien or a UFO, but yeah, they're out there. They're real. Okay, but that's fine. Like I believe there's life on other planets too. But I just found it odd that you can go down a path of that's all real, but what you're saying isn't real. So it's just what you see, probably what you read, everything like that. It affects your consciousness. And like probably as I'm getting older or whatever, you do have little experiences along the way, or for me, that help me realise that we're all connected. So in saying that, there was a couple of times, there was one when I was very young, and it was in England actually, and I was out in what we call the forest. When I was walking, I was a long way from home. I was by myself at a very young age, but I wasn't lost in the sense. So there was no panic, there was no fear. I was just, but then you have a rest and you sit and you just by yourself. You've got trees all around you. You might see a squirrel or something like that. And there was something about that experience. It's just like, I'm not different from this. I'm part of this. I belong with this. And I relate that to, like most people, I love nature and stuff. I love the walks on the beach. But it's a totally different experience to if you're walking on the beach with somebody, you're enjoying probably the sun coming up, the waves, all these sort of things. You're enjoying it. But to me, you're separate from it. Because you're separate because a lot of your conscious thoughts are with who you're with, or even if you're not talking to each other, you're still conscious that they're there, and you might have other rubbish going on in your head, like how am I going to pay for the car to get serviced or some rubbish like that. But when you're truly by yourself, and you can switch all that nonsense off. Like meditation, I suppose. If you can manage to switch all that off, then you become, or I do anyway, become very, very aware that, this, I'm all part of this. This belongs to me. I'm touching the sand and feeling the water, but it's all part of me. I'm not separate from it. Mm-hmm. But again, when I'm with other people, with my grandkids or whatever, then it becomes, I'm there, but I'm separate from it, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So consciousness to me is just my personal journey and how I see things and how I think about things and how they affect me.
Yeah. I love that answer. I love it. I've had how many guests now? Something like somewhere around 30 something different people answer that question, and every single one of you, including myself, has answered that differently. And that's the beauty of that question, is that it is such a vast possibility of answers, because everybody is different. And yet, as you say, we are all very intricately connected, even if we don't always feel it sometimes. And I really enjoy that thing of you touching on, the ghosts and spirit and versus aliens, and just want to give a quick shout out to our lovely audience out there at the moment. Deanne, hello, darling, and Trish, who's been a bit cheeky in the chat for you, and Sandra. So yes, hello, beautiful beings. Thank you for having comments and saying hi. It's really awesome to have you playing along with us. So there was a couple of things when I was growing up. One of them was my lovely story that I tell from time to time about the man standing at the driveway by the letterbox and as a little one going, and, taking off inside, because I had no idea what that was. And when I was much older and in my 20s, I guess, and then I started to realize that actually spirit is true, I actually started feeling far less anxious around death and way more happy and content, because what I did experience as a child was not a made up in my head thing. It was like it did actually truly happen. And yes, when you die, you're not just food for the worms, because that was always something that really concerned me. I was like, what makes me me? What makes you you? And how can that just suddenly not exist anymore? I don't understand how that's possible. So it was like, and I wasn't hugely, like, I'd been to church. I'd been to a few different churches and stuff growing up. My parents dragged me along, as they do, but I never really comprehended that thing of when you die, you're food for worms, your body just becomes dirt. It's like, what happens to you? If we are all the same, if we all just become food for the worms, then surely we're all carbon copies of each other. Why don't we all have the same personality? Why is that? So these are all the things I used to wonder about as a primary school teenager. I was a weird kid. Used to wonder about some very strange stuff. But yeah, it's like it was one of the most comforting things in my 20s when I realized actually spirits are true, ghosts are true, and I can be aware of all of them, and that's what makes you you and me. It's like, yay.
Yeah, like with the people that I meet in these groups and stuff like that, and when they share their experiences of some of them, they've been seeing spirit, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, from a very young age. They're ones that have never lost it. So coming into adulthood, it was very hard. They found it frightening, so that they come to these groups to learn how to deal with it. And because they never know when they're going to pop up. Like they might not see one for a few days, and then all of a sudden, boof, there's one standing in the lounge room, and they're like, and then they just disappear. And I thought,
they're kind of like huntsman spiders, you know. They're a bit like that, you know. You don't expect them to be there, and all of a sudden, there's this dirty, great big huntsman spider, and it's just like they're not going to hurt you. They just give you a bit of a fright. And you can move them on pretty easy.
Mm.
But, you know, it's that initial thing of you aren't expecting to see them and all of a sudden they're there.
Mm. But, and it's interesting. I mean, maybe I'll start seeing them again later. I only ever recall seeing ghosts. I would have been 6, 7 at the time. And it was only the one occasion. And this is because I come from England. This was an old house we lived in England, and that was haunted to boot. So we didn't see a lot of stuff, but there was just some weird shit going on in that place. But I was with my brother at the time, and we were looking out the window that sort of looks out to the backyard, and we had a big shed out there. And these 2 men went past workmen, and back then we used to have coal delivered. And the coalmen used to come in, and they'd carry the big sacks of coal on their back. And they'd go in and dump it in his shed, and then they go back to the truck and get another couple. And we were there, and we yell out to Mum, "Oh, the coalman's here." And she's like, better not be, because we're pretty tight for cash sort of thing. And she didn't have any money to pay for coal. It wasn't delivery time. And the coalman's here, just been into the shed. And she should have come round for a look. And then she bolted out the front door to stop them. Well, there was no truck out on the road. There was no coalman. There was nothing. But there was three of us that saw these 2 gentlemen taking coal into the shed and coming out with empty sacks. And there was no truck, no coalman. Went into the shed. There was no fresh coal delivered. What that was?
They could have at least brought the coal. Seriously.
It was ghost coal. but then not so much after that. A few bumps in the night, that sort of thing, but didn't really see anything. And it's interesting because my daughter has more spiritual experiences than I do, and I mentioned my wife, she has seen ghosts 2 or 3 times. Right, so it's interesting sort of how it works. And she can't remember seeing them when she was young, but now, she can sometimes hear voices.
Mm-hmm.
An example of that was I was up in the hospital the other morning with my daughter. She was getting a toe fixed, and my wife was waiting here. And then I got a message, and she said, she got up because she could hear me talking, and then she could hear my daughter making the noises because of this dislocated or broken toe, whatever you thought it was at the time. And I'm looking, well, that's interesting, because the time she heard that, it was a little bit before then that I was getting my daughter, helping her out of the bed because she wanted to use the toilet. So when she was getting out, she was, grimacing because the thing was hurting. So it was a bit odd that, she heard us in the house. She actually come down to look, and there was no one here. We weren't home. But it was at the same time that she was making noises in the hospital.
Right.
So,
that's because mamas know. Mums are psychically connected to their daughters and their kids. So they have this ability, whether they recognize it or not, to intuitively, psychically connect in with their kids so that they can know where they're that old saying of, mums have the eyes on the back of their head.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually, it's that, but it's actually intuitive psychic connection. And it's like that will never go. It doesn't even matter if you have a completely fractured relationship with your parents, especially your mother. they will always be connected to you, whether you like it or not. It's part of the journey, you know. It's a funny old thing. So, with your various journeys and your various moments throughout your life, and I'm going to keep this fairly broad, I would like to know, what is your most tasty moment in life so far?
Well, for me personally, the tasty stuff is very recent. Like I said, I started this virtually when I was 57. Okay, so anybody that thinks it's too late, if you're interested, it's not. You can start whenever you feel the need. They always tell me that things happen for a reason and the timing is always right. So obviously the timing was right for me then. So yeah, the tasty stuff for me is the mediumship side, obviously, bringing through spirit, and because as an evidential medium, you have to bring through concrete evidence. As you know, you can't just say, I got your grandmother here and she cooks scones and stuff like that. So what? They all do that. So you got to be more specific. So I'd say, the juicy stuff is when that gets right, and especially with the teacher that I have with Zoom. I've read with him a couple of times, and I was pretty pleased because I was just getting stuff right. And one time in particular, like I remember I had his grandmother in, and I was talking about, she's a bit hobbled over, grandmother thing, they all are. I said about the walking sticks she had, but I knew that's pretty lame. A lot of old people have walking sticks. So I focused on the walking stick. Well, I was drawn to the walking stick for some reason. And like a picture in my head. And I said to him straight away, this is not an ordinary walking stick. This doesn't have like the handle on the top. I said, this is like a club. It's like it was dome on the top. She holds it like this and it peters down. Then all of a sudden it come to me. I said, it's a bit like the Ace of Wands in tarot. And straight away, he's like, I know what you're talking about. Righto. So we had that. And then I was explaining her by the fireside. Yeah, so we went from there. And I went out, describing her backyard, what I could see over the fence, the village down below. And he said, yeah. And I was just on a roll. I just kept going. I said, if you go out the front door, I said, at the end of the path, I said, she's got one of these old-fashioned lampposts. I said, it's a black thing, old-fashioned glass. I said, it doesn't work. I said, but the other thing is, it's on the inside of the yard. It's not out on the curb. This is inside the yard. He's just, I said, it's one of these old gas ones. That's what it was. Yeah. So then we just went through, and I remember telling him about how she used to tell them stories. And I said, but she would do it like a fortune teller. Like she'd grab their hand. And I said, it was all made up. She wasn't reading your fortune. She was just telling stories, And he could recollect with that. I mentioned, I said, there's a TV. I said, but where it is in the room, which was behind it, it's facing the wall. I said, that thing don't work. She hadn't used that for a while. So there was all these things going on, all this information. And and everyone was spot on. And I even had stuff like, there was an incident I said, when you used to come and visit, this is when they were kids, when you used to come and visit, I said, you didn't go to the front door. I said, you used to go down to the side of the house and tap on the window. I said, you're wasting your time going to the door. She'd never hear you. So you'd have to bang really loud on the window. So all these things, he knew I had it. Like it was without a doubt his grandmother. So when you do that, and it's the teacher, your head's that. You're not supposed to. The ego is not supposed to come in, but it does. It does tend to, and it does spur you on to keep doing it. So I've had a few readings like that where everything's been spot on. But as far as like real juicy moments, because like I said, I'm very fascinated with this connection with spirit and everything. I can share this. This is what my daughter went through. Okay, but I love the story, so I'll share it. When my granddaughter she's only a newbie, and she was sick, and she had to go into the isolation unit in the hospital because of this virus or something she had. So it was in isolation, but my daughter wasn't getting any rest. It was no good. So what I decided to do was I would come in at night, and I did a night shift. So I'd sit there while my daughter was supposed to be sleeping and go to sleep. That's what you're supposed to be there for. Eventually she would, so that she could relax knowing that there was someone there with her daughter all the time. And I had plenty of leave up my sleeves. It made more sense that I done it, than her husband. And she was able to relax. So when April would stir in the night, I'd be able to get her back to sleep. And that was gone. So this went for a few nights. And then there was one night I didn't come in. And of course, April being so small and everything, the only way they could feed her, my daughter was expressing the milk and all that, but she had the tube up the nose and it goes right down into the stomach. So it's quite a long tube, and it's taped to her face and all this. And to keep April still, how they could cocoon them, you put them in that blanket, you do with young children. So she was like that. Anyway, this evening, my daughter had a dream, and she dreamt that it was my father who'd passed, and they had a very close relationship. And he was sitting in the chair that I would have been sitting in. And she said it was so real. And he just told her, everything's going to be all right. That was his words. Everything was going to be all right. Well, the next thing Monique was woken from a dream because April's screaming. The nurse come down and she came in, and I said, well, settle down. And she go, oh, you silly girl, you pulled the tube out. My daughter was looking like she couldn't pull the tube out because like it goes. It's not just, it's a long tube. Take her face. And April's still in her blankets. She's like this.
Swaddled up.
Yeah, this tube was out. And the nurse sort of done a bit of, well, that's all right because, that won't need to go back in. No, she doesn't need that anymore. So that's all right. And then she was talking to Monique and she said, oh, see, your dad left early tonight. And she said, well, no, he didn't come in. And she goes, yeah, I just seen him leave. I just seen him leave as I was coming in. And this is the isolation ward. You can't just come and go as you please. You've got to sit there and, wait to be let in, and you have to wait to be let out. You can't just come and go as you please. And obviously, my father and I look very similar sort of from behind. But this nurse was saying, no. She said, I just saw him leave. He was leaving as I was coming into the room. And Nick said, no, he was never here. So that was quite an interesting one.
That just about made me cry.
We've got time to share another one?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And again, this is with my daughter. This is at her place. And her husband had lost his wedding ring. And he was mortified. He looked everywhere. Went back to work. He went all through his car. A couple of days later, he was down at the pawn shop, seeing if anybody handed it. And I think it'd been lost for probably 2 weeks. He just could not find his wedding ring. And this evening, my daughter was sitting on her bed, and there was she said it was like steam sort of crossing the room. It's just a cloud of steam. And she just watched it, and then it went out, and then it went around into the next room where her daughter and her husband were, and she just yelled out, get in here. And he came in, but as he came in, he put his hand in his pocket when she was trying to explain what happened. And he's like, what the hell? And it was his bathrobe, and he lives in the damn thing. He wears it all the time. And he's always going around with his hands in his pockets and everything. And put his hand in his pocket, and he thought, there it was, this wedding ring that he'd lost and couldn't find. That had all happened, and the wedding ring was there.
Wow.
So, yeah, just little things like that they sort of fascinate me. Like how them sort of things happen. My youngest grandson, be interesting to see how he develops later on, because he's always been knowing, connected somehow. There was one time my daughter and him were coming out to my place, and they went past, it was the old folks' home, and that's where my father spent his last few months. And he says to Mum, his mum, oh, so that's where Puppy was. And she said, no, we're going to see Puppy. We're going home. And of course, when you don't understand him, he gets a bit cross, and he said, not my puppy, your puppy. For me, it just got chills, because he'd never met my father. He wasn't born. He'd gone past. It was like, oh, so that's where Puppy was. Like, he was. That's where he lived. So he comes up with little things like that. Just recently, wife and I got to go to the wife's car. We got a new car, okay? And ever since I saw it before you even got in it, I said, there's something about this, the front end, it reminds me of the old Mustangs. I said, it's not completely the same, but it's a new Honda, but it just reminds me of a Mustang. And, it's this black Honda, we bought it. And never said anything around the grandson or anything about it. And they looked at the car, beautiful car and all that. And then later he says to his mum, that's like our old car. Said, no. The old car is red. Like they've got a different car. It's red, a bit like what we've got now. Of course, then he gets cross, Not your old car. It's like my old car. It looks just like that. And it's black, which our car's black. But it's got a horse on the front. And of course, Monique's like, why would it have a horse on the front? She's thinking of a horse-drawn car. And I said, no, Mustangs have a horse badge on the front. And I keep saying the front looks like a Mustang. And he was adamant that his old car, not theirs, was just like that. It was black and it had a horse on it. He comes up with some weird ones, but I think probably the weirdest one was fairly recently. He was questioning his mum, do you remember when I died? And like, no, like, where are we going with this, And when I died, and then I had to wait in that place until Dad come and got me. What place, No, it was just a big, bright place, but it was nice. It was peaceful, and I just had to wait there until Dad come and got me. So with that, we just sort of changed the subject, But and then she thought it was all finished with. But then at the end of the day, when his father come home, the first thing he'd done was run up to his dad. You remember, don't you, Dad? You remember when I died, when I had to go to that special place and wait for you. And of course, his poor father's like, what's going on? So Monique, she had to explain to him, But yeah, just things like that. So obviously he's had a Mustang in a past life, and he vaguely remembers waiting in wherever for his father to come and collect him. So yeah, just things like that.
In between, yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So cool. I reckon you guys get a lot out of listening to Dolores Cannon's 5 Lives Remembered. I think that would be a
Okay.
fabulous book for you guys to have a look at and listen to and stuff. It's
What was
like
that
she
called
has
again?
5 Lives Remembered. It's her first book, but it wasn't released until like the 4th or 5th book because nobody would pick it up to start off with. But it is actually her journey with her husband into doing past life regression with hypnotherapy and how it all started. But it was with this one particular client that they went through and the 5 different lives, and it goes into some of those details of how when you're in the in-between, when you're waiting, and
All right.
it's really cool. It's very, very informative. Yeah. Just
there is.
comments in there. So
Hey?
yeah, that's it. Monique has commented in there too. So yeah, love it. But yeah, so that's I over the last 12 to 18 months, I've done a lot of sort of listening on Audible, and when I'm driving, when I'm doing renovation work like I was doing, that Dolores Cannon has been one of the awesome authors that I've listened to lately, and throughout that 12 months. Another one was the Conversations with God. The Complete Conversations with God was actually really, really helpful to me to release some of my stuff around the word God. Because having been through the church system a little bit, I had some interesting like wonks around the word God. So when it would come time for me to use theta healing, for example, I was actually able to say God, source, creator, universe. I couldn't say God before that though. I felt a little bit like, because theta isn't religion. Theta is just healing. And to say God just felt wrong to put it in there, But once I'd actually listened to this book on the Complete Conversations with God with Neil Donald Walsh, and I listened to all 3 books, it completely changed it all. And I realized, actually, it's just that he's been misidentified, misapplied, and misused by the religious groups. Like, that's not his intent or its intent. It's just, it is what it is, It's like, and we are all interconnected, and there is no such thing as a vengeful God, and it's just people being assholes to each other.
Pretty much.
So that was a big aha moment for me too. So with your beautiful business, there was a little bit of hints in the intro there, but what is the aim of your business? I'd love for you to express the aim of your business to the audience tonight.
Okay. Just to clear something up for the start. Yes, it is my business, but it's not a full-time business. That
doesn't matter.
I tried to make it full-time sort of way back, but it was too spasmodic. You get a few readings one week, and then you get nothing, and then you get a heap, and so you couldn't really rely on it. And but yeah, the main aim for me is just to help people, just to give them some clarity, some direction. Okay. Like an example of that was probably just the other weekend. One of the readings that stood out was I was just going through it all, and I knew that this young woman had been, she'd been weighing things up, she'd been sorting through things, and something wasn't right, something was missing, and she just wanted to walk away, leave it all behind. And my example of that is, which I probably told her, I said, to me, it's like when they've got an idea, they do all the study, they follow up, they probably do the apprenticeship, they go for that, then they get their own business, then they make the business successful, all right? But then also they come to a stage where I don't know, there's something missing, and they can't quite put their finger on what it is, and they just want to walk away and start all over again. And then, but what that is, you explain to them, the thing that's missing is the challenge. Like, they're learning stuff they haven't learned before. There's the challenge. There's the chase. Like they say, that most of the thrill of the hunt is in the chase, not so much the end. You know, when you slaughter some poor fox or whatever it is, but you got that thrill. So all the time there's something spurring them on, and it was gone. There's something missing. I thought, oh, yeah. And she said, oh, yeah. And then all of a sudden it drew my attention. I thought, oh, shit. And I thought, oh, sorry. I said, this is a relationship spread. I said, you're just about to walk out on your relationship, aren't you? Yep. Right. So with that, and they had to be going directed. But we worked through it, and I helped her to say where it was going. I picked up on her husband, what was going on there, what his thoughts were. And, you know, I said, he's not going to let this happen. He'll do everything. I said, there's some stuff that's going to change. They're going to work it out. But, yeah, so she went away feeling a whole lot better about that. And I think, see, my approach to when I do reading, a lot of people, they don't want people to come in giving information and answers straight away. And I hate that, because some get a bit excited. Oh, I'm here because, and you go, whoa, stop. Because it's just too confusing. I do know there are other people out there, and it's their way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the wrong way. We all do things differently. But they will ask the question, and they will say, what sort of reading do you want? Are you going to say financial, relationship? Is there anything you want, or just a general reading? And if I had done that to this woman, and she had come, oh, this is about relationship, is it going to last or not? All right. So if she had told me that straight away, I'm looking for answers on relationship, then I could have said everything's going to be all right. She probably would have been pleased with the answer, because that's a nice answer to have. But I don't believe it's got the same impact as, because she didn't give me any information, that I picked up and I told her, you're about to walk out in your relationship. So now she knows, well, yeah, if I know that, and then the rest of it, she can hang on to it. It becomes more believable. So, and then she goes away with a bit more hope. You know, sort of, yeah, if that makes sort of any sense at all. I had another, well, I told you about this a bit earlier, about the woman, and I knew it wasn't very pleasant for me, but I just knew someone was going to pass. Like, she was losing a close family member. And I thought, how do I get this across? You know, this is, you know. But I worked it out, and like Spirit was telling me, it's okay. Like, she's expecting it. So, sigh of relief, and it's still hard to blurt it out, because what if I'm wrong? You know, and then, yeah, and she said, oh, no, I'm expecting that. And so we went on from there. But if I had have asked her questions at the start, and she had said to me, you know, my uncle or whoever it was, I didn't ask questions, you know, she said, oh, I think they're going to pass. Do they have very long? Well, from that, I can go, oh, yeah, no, they are going to pass. But it doesn't have the same. Like, if you have no knowledge, and then you actually tell them that you know what's happening, then to me, it's got more impact. To me, it's not much different to sort of mediumship. If you're going to bring in someone's mother, father, it doesn't matter. If you're bringing in someone from the spirit world, and that's why we practice this evidential mediumship, you've got to have some fact. You've got to have something, right? And then you can't just say, oh, you know, they were old when they passed, and you know, they might have passed from smoking. You need a bit more depth into that. I won't give you one of my. I've had some good example. One example, because I'm like that. With me, you need to grab my attention, and I think that's what I try to do with everybody else. You've got to grab their attention first. My daughter was having a reading, and they brought through my father, obviously her grandfather. Oh yes, this and this, and yeah. That's all, but could be anybody. It's all very, But then she blurted out. She looked at me. She said, "What's a rooster booster?" And then my daughter was like, "Oh God, that's definitely him." Because what the rooster booster was, he used to watch me playing football with the kids. And if I kicked the ball as hard and as high as I could, that's what we called a rooster booster. So we'd be playing football, and every now and again, they'd, "Come on, Dad, give us a rooster booster." So I just belt this ball up. And of course, this medium, she's just looking like, "What the hell is a rooster booster?" And we had to explain it to her. So then we knew that was my father. There was no doubt about it. No one else knew what the hell a rooster booster was. And she didn't, you just don't get that sort of information. And then there was other stuff she brought in too, just to cement the deal. And then you go from there. But if you don't come in with some information, and that's the thing I try and do. I try and get as much information as I can before I use the cards. And when it works, it's good because you get these people sitting there like, "What? How'd you know that?" Now I've got your attention. Now you'll listen to the rest of the reading.
Yeah.
And then if I've got some information, you'll listen to that as well. And if it's good news, you're really going to listen to it. So, it's quite fascinating. Love it. And but it is all about helping other people and guiding them. But trying to deliver that message in a most pleasant way, I mean, especially if it's a little bit ordinary news, you've got to be sort of tactful about it. You can't just go bull in the gate. Oh, wow, you're going to go bankrupt and lose everything. Sorry about that. Yeah, did you pay for the reading, by the way? Because
or is that check gonna bounce? Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that do pop up in readings and sessions and things like that. Because, as you know, I'm an energetic healer as well, and there's many times that people's spirit team members will pop through. And I had a really interesting one the other day where this beautiful lady, she's had a few sessions with me now, and 3 members of her team came in, and I tried to get a bit more information out of them, who they were. And they said, "It's inconsequential. It doesn't matter." And I was just like, "Whoa, okay. No problem. I'll just pass on the message that you have, but all right. I'll respect your privacy." But yeah, they were very adamant. They didn't want to tell me. And I was just like, okay. They just had a message to deliver, and that was all. I was like, okay.
But and it's that, and I'm learning to recognise it more, because like I said, I've been doing this 5 minutes compared to some people. But when you get good teachers and they help you and guide you, and so I'm getting better at learning the signs when spirit come through. And it was a bit like one of the workshops I was with Vale, and I stood up in front of the class, and and I said, okay, so I've got these 2 gentlemen coming through. And Vale said to me, "Well, just tell one to stand back," because from her experience, you'll get quite a few people coming through, but you can't sort of read them all at once. So Vale politely said to me, "Just tell one to stand back." And I didn't even think about the answer. this just blurted out of me, and I just said, not happening. They're coming through. They do everything together. And I actually shocked myself when I said it. It's like, okay, that was a bit rude. And Vale just looked at me and said, so go ahead. Mm-hmm. So I done this reading on, because they done everything together, right? And so we ended up doing this reading. And funny enough, because I used to start calling myself the teacher's pet after that, because it was another one. Well, it was another one for Vale, because I had these two, I had these two guys, and I sort of described them, and then I was saying what they're about. I said, "Oh, these are some shonky people. Like, they're into some no good stuff. Like, this is the original Dodgy Brothers here. Like, anything to do with making money." And I said, but it was all underhanded. Nobody's putting up their hand, and I'm thinking, man, like, surely, like, you'd have to recognise someone like that. But all the time, it was Vale. But yeah, we got it all worked out in the end, so it was all good. It come through, and it was all spot on, and yeah, another good one. So, but yeah, that I always remember that feeling of like the way I spoke, how it come through. It virtually wasn't me. It was obviously me, but it was just like, ain't happening. We do everything together. We're coming through together. That's it. And I've learned that when I'm on a roll, even with the tarot reading and that, like I tell people quite often, spirit work through me. So, and I can sort of tell it because I tend to sort of go off in a bit like I am now. And then all this, I start coming out with information, and then, and it's only stuff that they understand. So, but it's not me thinking about it. It's just rattling on,
Mm-hmm.
And half the time,
and I find that quite often when all that happens, when you're just in that beautiful flow, you can't even remember what you said. It's like, it's coming through you, and it's like the words come out, and then unless it's recorded, there's no way I could recall what I'd said in the reading or anything, but they can, because it's for them. It's not for me, it's for them. So it makes sense. The only times I do recall is generally throughout like a healing session, when I'm having those conversations with their spirit team and I'm having to pass that on to the person after the healing session is over. Then I'll remember some temporary. It's like in my short-term memory bank, and then it's like poof, gone after that.
And there's other things where I'll hit on something. I'll say whatever's going on in their life, and you do get the. I don't know what you're talking about. So that's right. And then I'll be doing the reading, and all of a sudden, no, I've got to bring this up again. And I said I might bring it up 3 or 4 more times, and you're probably going to keep saying no, but I can't let it go because it keeps coming up. So I'll mention it again. God, in my mind, I'm thinking, just go away. The woman keeps saying no, And but then I'll get a different bit of information. I thought, oh, hang on, maybe I'm not translating this properly. So I'll say it in a different way, and all of a sudden the penny will drop. Oh yeah, right. And, I just apologise. Sorry, that's me not understanding it. But then we can move on, and it's quite often it's something really trivial that doesn't mean a lot to that person, but then they still understand it, and then we can move on from there. But if it needs to come through, they'll have me go back to it, and they might show it to me in a different way until I get it right. Probably cursing me, thinking you idiot, but yeah,
the teams are pretty patient. I mean, I find they can. When I was first really starting to branch out and do proper readings for people, beyond just me and maybe a couple of my mates, and I would set up these meetings, like these Zoom sessions, and for these people's readings, and I had to make a rule that when they book, that their team, their spirit team, can only come through half an hour before a session. So I had to set up energetic office hours, because otherwise their teams would start coming through and talking to me as soon as the session was booked. And it would be like I was having all this noise around my ears, and it was just like that. My ears would be ringing, and I'm just like, and I'm getting teams upon teams upon teams, and I'm like, go away, I need to sleep. So I had to set up office hours. So it's like I have that half an hour before a session that is blanked out, so that I can actually start communing with their team, so that when I actually hit the session, online session, it's like, boom, we're already up and running, man. We've been chatting for half an hour already. And in the spirit realm, half an hour's worth of energetic chatting is actually quite a lot, but back in the day when I was first starting, I was slow. I didn't always have this, like I was still learning how to interpret their energy, and I required that time to really get familiar with them. There'd be some people who I found that the clients who commune with their spirit team a lot, their teams would actually be very calm when they came through in that half an hour. They would be just like real gentle sort of whispers, sort of like leaves and feathers and stuff like that. It was just like a nice warm hug when they'd come through. But when the people who had not had very much connection with their spirit team at all, theirs would be like, bah! In my face going, I'd be just like, dude, settle down, it's okay. Shh. Just lower the volume just a bit. I don't need you to be that loud. I can hear you. It's okay. Because it would just be like this energy, this intensity of energy. And sometimes it would be sound, sometimes it'd be light, sometimes it just feel like this massive weight on my ears. And it was just like, okay, step back just a touch. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've experienced, because like I'd be at work, and then some of these readings I do after work or weekend. But even sometimes I'd be at work and I've got a client coming, get ready for them and all that. And I'm trying to concentrate on what I'm doing, and all of a sudden it'd be coming through. I'd get sort of little messages, and I'm thinking, okay, so you're coming to me because this is what's going on in your life. Like there's a major breakup, or there's this, or there's a battle over the children, and I'm getting all these things, and I'm trying to switch it off. Like, no, don't get too much in your head. Because otherwise, when you start off, if you're going to be wrong, it's very hard to get this out of your head. But sometimes you can't, and it gets very persistent. Mm-hmm. And end up, we'll sit down, we'll be doing the reading, we'll have a bit of a talk at the start, okay, get into this, and all of a sudden, I'll be like, well, okay, what I'm getting is, and I just go back to what's been going on in my head all through the day. This. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, and it's a bit hard, but because you try and shut it out, not to get too far ahead, because you don't know whether you're getting excited, you're on a roll, and you're just making up this whole fantasy thing. And then if you go and blurt it out, then it's all wrong. You're like, oh, God, egg on my face. But more often, it doesn't happen a lot. But like you said, it's just sometimes, and then you get a lot of information coming through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's not a mediumship reading. That's just a psychic card reading. Mm-hmm. But spirit is still putting stuff into your head, like giving you a bit of a head start.
Yeah. My dad, when I first started going to like psychic readers and stuff, and my dad had passed by the stage, and when I'd go to these readers back in New Zealand, and they'd be just like, man, this guy is really loud. I'm like, oh, well, we haven't spoken in like 20 years, so that could be something to do with it. And they're like, yeah, he can be a bit more quiet now, thanks. So I kind of got to experience that loudness from, the client's perspective of not being able to hear it at all, and then hearing what the psychic was saying and going, okay, so that's I wonder what that must be like, and then now I get to have that experience, which is fun. So for somebody just beginning, say, their spiritual journey, I'm going to put it that way, what sort of top tip would you give them?
Okay. If you're starting, once you start getting into it, like if you want to do like psychic card reading, or if you want to get into the mediumship, whatever, and they will teach you this, like you need to go to workshops. So it's just to try and wing it on your own. I mean, I don't doubt that there are some naturals out there. They can just psychic and they can just go. But if you're sort of learning and wanting to get into it, one of the biggest things is trust. Okay. And gosh, I've lost count of the amount of times I've heard that word in the workshop. It's been drummed in here. And I'm a lot better at it now than I used to be. But it is hard, because especially if you're an image person or you get words and you think, do I pass that on? Because that is just bizarre. And you have to trust it, and you put it out there, and you'd be surprised that what you're saying is right. Where it becomes hard is because there's times when you're wrong, and that's just it, you're wrong. So the next time you've got it in your head, but what if I'm wrong this time? So you tend to doubt yourself, and you tend to lose the trust. So, and I actually believe that is spirit sort of testing you, like, how much do you really want this? Are you willing to be humiliated and come back again? Because it's a very long process. You have to have patience and trust and all that. And the biggest thing that I do, and I tell other people to do, is question everything. All right? You question everything. So, and the same token, you can learn, you unlearn, and you relearn, but you question. I mean, I've got a bookshelf full of books up there, different authors, so they have different experiences and different view on things. It's a bit like that consciousness. This is their life and how they're living it and how it affects them. So they'll write everything that's from their consciousness, how their lives affected them and what they do. So you can go through that and you take what you want. Oh, I like that. I don't understand what they're talking about there. That's rubbish. I'll put that aside. Mm-hmm. And someone else will read the same book and they'll pick different things. But that's what you've got to do. You take on things and you question things all the time. I still question what I do. I question things in the workshop, and there's nothing weird. You've got good teachers and all that. They encourage you to question. You're not coming in and saying, oh, I don't believe what you're saying. You'll question it, get their view on it, and then in your own head you can go, yeah, I don't think so, that's rubbish. Throw that one out the back. But you don't just go in and take it all in. Because if people started doing that in anything, you'd all be clones, you'd all be identical, and you don't want to be like that. You have to have your own spin on things. You have to have your own take. So learn, unlearn, relearn. Definitely trust. Be patient, and don't like beat yourself up. And especially with psychic work, you really sort of got to concentrate on your psychic work first. Well, I did. Mm-hmm. And every time you get something right, pat yourself on the back of it. So if you're like we used to practice with cards, you have a card face down and you write down as much information as you can get from that card. You might say, oh, I'm getting a lot of yellow. I think, this might be in there, might be that. And you could even try and guess what the card is if you want. And then you turn it over and it's like, ooh. You can beat yourself up. You're totally wrong. But then you go through and go, hey, actually, there was a lot of yellow. So out of the 10 things, sometimes you might only get one right. But you congratulate yourself for that one thing that you got right and go, okay, last time I got 4 things right. This time I got 1 thing right. Doesn't matter. You still got something right. You don't beat yourself up about it. You always try to encourage yourself. And that way you move forward. And, don't do what I do. Compare yourself to yourself. But you're not supposed to compare yourself. They always say you don't compare yourself to others, okay? I mean, he wants to be a Tyler Henry, it's not going to happen. So you don't compare yourself to people like that. You don't compare yourself to your teacher or another student in the class because they're all on different levels. So you don't get all jealous and, they done a brilliant reading and all that. But a very important thing is you don't judge yourself on yourself. So when you do have these magnificent days and it just everything's spot on, and then another time, not so much. But you start. I know I can do better. I've done better before. I asked I think it was Vale, one of the teachers there one day. I said, "What used to frustrate me?" And anybody that wants to go to a psychic mediumship development class, whatever you want, don't go in, especially if you're a newbie, don't go in with this false impression of, I'm going to this class, I'm going to be taught how to be a medium. Because that's not what it's about. There's no special, all you need to do is this. You get all that right, and you're a medium. They encourage to get the best out of you. Because I said what it's like along the lines of, it's not a cooking class. It's not you're being taught how to make scones. You go along and do this, and this, bake it for a certain amount of time. That's the end result. Mediumship and psychic work are not like that.
It's not like that.
You don't have a set recipe. So if anybody goes to a few classes and go, well, I don't see any improvement, I'm no better than I was. You probably have made little bits of improvement, but you can't see them. Right? And then you get a bit jealous because someone else in the class, they're just finding it easy and going along. And I said to Vale one day, I said, that was one of the things that really frustrated me, because I was making progress. And I was sitting there and I'm doing this. The images are coming through. And So another day I'm doing exactly the same thing. Well, I think I am. I'm doing exactly the same thing. But I was wrong. I obviously wasn't connecting, because what was coming through made no sense at all. There was no validation. And it was very, very frustrating. And I said to Val, how comes I'm doing exactly the same thing, but the result's not there? And she goes, that's just how it is. You must be doing something but a little bit different that I didn't realize. And that was because I think I didn't recognize when I was actually connecting with spirit. And sometimes I still don't. Sometimes I do, and other times I lose it. And then I've got to try not to focus on that, because then it's like, this is not spirit. But then when I'm doing a reading and this person's validating everything, it must have been something. So so just trust, go along, and then be patient. And if it's something you want, stick with it. And you're never too late to start. You start
I love that. You can. 100%. Alrighty. Just before I ask you the most tastiest last question, and before I let you get back to your beautiful wife, who hopefully has some scones cooking, because you've talked a lot about scones today. So I would love to know, so you've got your Queen of Wands fairs coming up, but how else can people get in touch with you? how can they, like, do you do online sessions? What's your availability like?
Yeah,
that sort of stuff.
they can go to my Facebook page. First Sense. Go to the First Sense site, and they can leave a message there. But that quite often it'll take me a while to get to, because especially if I'm at work. I have my phone number there, and I tell people sometimes just to message me on my phone. Don't try and ring me, because I won't hear my phone at work. So if they just leave a message, then I will get back to them. I can do it, like I said, by Zoom. A lot of the people around here like to, drop in, say hello. It becomes more personal, especially if they're interested in mediumship. I have done mediumship, obviously by Zoom, but as you know, it becomes sort of easier when the person's in the room. I'm getting better at doing it in class on Zoom. That's how they can contact me. So
awesome. And of course, Barry's contact details are all in the show notes, and through both the Facebook event and through the YouTube as well. I haven't put your phone number up there because that's I don't wish that to be too terribly open, but your email and your Facebook page are both up there. All right. Last, most tastiest question for the evening. If you could sit next to any person on the park bench, they be dead or alive, it doesn't matter, who would it be and why?
Well, this is an easy one for me. I've had this one asked to me before, and I'm not just saying this because I know Trish is listening, but it would be my wife, Trish. I'm not trying to get any brownie points, because I just find that I'm trying to make up for the start of the show. No, because we're a normal couple. Yeah, we bicker and we have arguments and all that. But when we connect, when we're talking, we have a lot to talk about. So it's just very pleasant. So to be talking with somebody probably that knows so much about me, or we know so much about each other, and what we've done, and where, especially this new path I'm on now, I wouldn't be doing it without her support at all. So there's all that. If it was someone past, for me, it wouldn't be a past loved one. It wouldn't be like my father, brother, anything like that. Because as much as you'd have probably a lot to talk about, and it'd be nice, but then you've got that at the end, well, that's it. And you got to go through all that again, that grieving process. They're there, but now they're gone. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be anybody like that. I don't see the point in that, So if it was someone past, I'd say be someone like Arthur Finley, or the likes of Gordon Higgins. Yeah, Arthur Finley or Gordon Higgins. One of them old-time spiritualists, that have been in it. There would be a lot of questions to ask them, because they've been through it, they've seen it. Both have been called out as frauds and that through their career, some of the stuff they've done. So, be interesting to tap into that, like what really happened, around all that sort of thing. So, people like that. And then, because there's no immediate sort of contact. Then you could go to even a movie star or something, if I could pick one. But again, it's the same thing. You could have a chat with them, and then they're gone. It's no big deal. You never review them anyway. So, but no, yes, it'll be Trish. You listening, Trish?
Oh. She was in there. I'm pretty sure she's still there. Oh, dear. Wow, thank you, Barry. It has been an absolute delight to have you on Tasty Tuesdays. And she says now she feels bad because there's no scones. There we go. We put in the order for tomorrow.
No, it was good fun. It was a pleasure to talk. We could probably go on for hours.
We probably could. And that's one of the gifts of this Tasty Tuesdays is that, like I was saying to you in the green room beforehand, this show is really about showing the people who are coming through now, the newbies, the ones that, you know, are just starting, or even the ones that have been around for a long time. It's like, oh yeah, I remember going through that, or yeah, that reminds me of this time. And it's just a really lovely, inspirational platform to be able to continue to grow the community, the conscious community around the world. And because I have audiences that span from here to New Zealand to the UK to Canada to the US, and occasionally Belgium and places like that. So they're all over the place, and it's really cool that now we've welcomed you into the Tasty Tuesday clan. I love it. So thank you so much for being here.
That's all right.
Alrighty, everybody, that is Tasty Tuesdays for today. Oh, goodness gracious. It was a good one. It was certainly a good one, and I loved every minute of it. I seriously, I would love it if Barry was my granddad and I could just sit with him and just listen to all of his stories all day. But unfortunately, we can't. So with that, my beautiful friends, I'll be back for Find You Fridays, 8 p.m. Adelaide time. And in the meantime, do something tasty for yourself. I don't really care what it is, but please do something tasty for yourself. Be bold, be brave, be you, everybody. And until next time, bye-bye.
See ya.